What's up guys, welcome to another Tech Gear Talk video. Today I want to talk about the Canon EOS M6, which is an awesome camera for vlogging and creating YouTube content. So I don't do a lot of vlogging, but as I'm getting more into it and creating more content in general, I'm looking for smaller and more portable cameras that I can take with me anywhere. And that got me looking into smaller DSLRs and smaller mirrorless cameras to see if they could replace some of my bigger cameras, again, when I'm traveling or if I just want to pick something up and do something very quickly. Hopefully this video does a good job at giving you a nice overview of the M6, and if it does, do me a favor, let me know by giving it a like and then hitting the subscribe and notification buttons for more camera reviews. So Canon released the M5 back in November of 2016, and it was, it still is a great camera. It's got a 24.2 megapixel APS-C sensor. It uses a new Digic 7 processor. It has a really nice electronic viewfinder. It's got like drag to autofocus feature, which is pretty cool, and a whole bunch of other really nice features. But the biggest problem for me in thinking of using the M5 for creating YouTube content or even vlogging is that the screen flipped down below the camera. So that's fine if you're just holding the camera and having it pointed at you and the screen is below, that's not a problem. But if you try to put it on a tripod and then flip the screen down behind, now the screen is being blocked by the tripod. And even if you just try to put it on something like the GorillaPod and then handhold it to just create a little bit more distance between you and the camera, again, the GorillaPod would be in the way of the flip down screen and you just wouldn't be able to see yourself. So as we're using cameras a little bit differently these days, that's like a pretty classic case of design versus user experience. So when Canon designed it, they were thinking that people are going to use it in a certain way, but then when it's actually out there and users pick it up, they actually want to use it a different way. And that's why the flip down screen, wasn't really a big hit. But the good thing is that Canon took note and took care of it. And now with the M6, as you can see, we got a flip up screen. What's kind of cool about it is that it first flips out a little bit, just like this. And what that means is if you're doing like an overhead shot, or you're just holding the camera high and you're not gonna be able to see the screen if it was pointed back, you could still use the screen in this orientation or this orientation, but then when you're ready to use it in selfie mode, you just flip it up, hold it up, and now the screen is facing you. And this selfie mode is great for YouTubers who are just shooting alone. You can even have it on a tripod facing you. You can see exactly how you're framed, or even if you're walking around with it, you don't ever have to worry about the fact that you might not be in the center of the frame or where you want to be. All right, so let's start looking at the camera itself. I love the way it looks. It's kind of a throwback to the old school SLR style cameras. Some of you might be a little bit too young to remember that. And I really love how it handles and feels. This rubber that is all the way around, even on this side, adds a really nice grippiness to it, so you don't ever really feel like it's gonna slip out of your hand. Even if you're just holding it with one hand, it's always pretty secure. And it goes to the back here, so between your thumb and the rest of your hand, you have a really solid grip of the camera. And that's great, again, if you're walking around with the camera, you never really wanna feel like, oh, it might slip out of my hand, I'll drop it. Now, I have the black version. It also comes in a silver version, which looks even more like the old style SLR cameras. And when I compare it to something like the 5D that I have, the size is great because it's super small. It fits really nicely right between something like the G7X Mark II or even like a mini DSLR like the SL2. And like I said, obviously it's smaller than my C100 Mark IIs or any of my 5Ds. So there are definitely some things that are important when you're choosing a camera to use for your YouTube channel. And one of them I already discussed is the flip up screen. Again, you have to be able to see yourself when you're on camera and you're the only one there. You have to make sure that you are where you want to be in the frame and that your picture is in focus. There are some ways to get around it. If you've got your camera on a tripod, you can mount a mirror or use an external monitor if your camera allows for that. But honestly, the simplest way is to have a screen. It faces you, you see yourself, and you know exactly what you're doing. I like to keep the process as simple as possible. So I feel like anything extra that you have to do in order to get your shot is just getting in the way of you getting your stuff done. Because just extra work that you have to do, extra setup, and that might take away from your ability to get as much done as you would like. So an easy, simple flip up screen just solves that problem. You never have to think about it again. So I have a pretty detailed list of things that I like to look at when I evaluate a camera. So let's go ahead and start looking at this M6 in a little bit more detail. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the sensor and the processor. And this gets a little nerdy, but please stick with me because it's super important. The M6 has a 24.2 megapixel APS-C sensor. And now the sensor is the part of the camera that captures the image and then it's converted by the processor. And the bigger the sensor, the better it is. A bigger sensor means better image quality because the sensor uses more information to create an image with more detail, better dynamic range, and then better overall low light performance. Now, this APS-C sensor is going to be excellent for anyone who's looking to create content for YouTube, or if you're just a hobbyist and you want to get good video. It's going to give you really nice, sharp video, and then of course, Canon's color science is awesome. The M6 uses the Digic 7 processor, which is the same processor that was used on the M5 and also used on other cameras like the G7X Mark II, the SL2, the T7i, and a bunch of other cameras. It's a really nice processor. It's really fast and the camera is super responsive both for video and for photography. If you're using this camera for photography, because of the fast processor, you can shoot at up to 7 frames per second. So I can just focus and then hold this button down and then listen. It just continues to fire and takes picture after picture after picture. And that's awesome for when you're photographing fast-moving subjects. So if you're following your pet or your kids, you'll get the right shot because you can shoot so many so quickly. Now, as far as video is concerned, the fast processor lets the M6 shoot full HD or 1080p at up to 60 frames per second. And on top of that, just doing things like bringing up the menus, setting different functions and presets, everything is super fast on this camera. Next, I want to talk about video resolution and frame rates. And we don't need to go into each one, but I'm just going to highlight a few of the important resolutions that the camera has for video. So the M6 can shoot at 1080p, so that's full HD, at 24, 30, and 60 frames per second. What's cool about that is that if you edit your videos in 30 frames per second like I do, you can actually do slow motion at up to 50% because you can play your 60 frames per second video at 30 frames per second. So that's gonna slow everything down by half. And if you're looking for that more cinematic look, then you can use 24 frames per second. Now, honestly, my only wish for this camera is that it shot 4K. That would really push it over the edge. But you need to ask yourself things like, do you even need 4K? Like, do you even have a computer that could process 4K video at any kind of reasonable speed? And honestly, at this price point and with all the features that are available, I'm not gonna complain too much. All right, so let's move on to talking about the lens and what options you have. The M6 uses the Canon EFM lens mount, and the kit that I got has a 15 to 45 millimeter f3.5 to 6.3 with image stabilization. What's really nice about buying Canon cameras in general is that there are tons of lens options, both from Canon and from other manufacturers. So for example, if you want to go even wider than this, there's an 11 to 22 millimeter lens that's really nice. And then if you want like telephoto zoom, there is a 55 to 200. So then you're going to be able to photograph things that are really far away and bring them closer to you. So that's also a great option. But the most important thing that I want you to take away from this is that the lens is interchangeable. So you're not stuck with a fixed lens on the camera. So even if in the beginning you just buy this kit and that's all you can afford right now and it serves your purposes for what you need right now, that's great. And then as your needs change, or maybe you get a little bit more money or it's time to get another gift, you can just keep this camera body and just build your collection of lenses. Now, this probably isn't gonna matter for anyone who's looking at this camera, but I'm just gonna point out that obviously it's an APS-C sensor, so it's not a full sensor camera. And what that really means is that there is a crop factor of 1.6. So when I look at focal length, like for example, this 15 to 45, I actually need to multiply that by 1.6 in order to get the 35 millimeter equivalent. So this 15 to 45 actually becomes a 24 to 72. Again, if I'm comparing it to how it would look on a 35 millimeter or a full sensor. But for most people who are buying this camera, they're not really choosing between this one and a full sensor camera. and it might not make a difference one way or the other. All right, next let's talk about continuous autofocus during video. So like for years, people in the movie industry were, maybe they still are, they're mocking the idea of having continuous autofocus for video. And that's fine when you're shooting a movie and you have someone that's their whole job is to pull focus on a particular shot while someone else is manning the camera. But like for me at least, like I'm the only one here, so I can't be behind the camera and here, and I can't make sure that my image is always in focus. And that's why continuous autofocus during video is so critical. Again, if you're creating content for YouTube, or even if you're just shooting video for fun, it's just, you can completely forget about it. So what we're doing right now is very dynamic. We're asking a lot of these cameras. We want them to work great on a tripod, but we also want them to be super light and portable so we can take them with us anywhere and handhold them as we're walking around. And in all of these different situations, you wanna make sure that your video is always in focus. Canon's dual pixel autofocus is awesome. It's awesome, I love it. I mean, it works right out of the box. There's like nothing you need to do. I'm just gonna hold this up to the camera and I'm gonna point it at me, and you'll see that it automatically picked up my face and there is nothing I needed to do, so I'm already in focus. The other thing that's nice is that even as I move through the frame, all right, so even if I've got it focused on me and then I keep moving the camera from side to side, it's still gonna continue to track my face, which is just awesome. Another awesome thing about the dual pixel autofocus is that I can just click on something on the screen and the camera will automatically bring it into focus. So I'm not messing around with a focus ring or anything like that. I just click on something and boom, it picks it up and then tracks it as I move the camera from side to side. And I can actually stage a scene with something in the foreground and something in the background and just click from one to the other and the camera will automatically change focus. And as you'll see, it's super fast. It doesn't hunt or like look for what to focus on. It's dead on every time. Like I said, I love the dual pixel autofocus. I wish my cameras had it, but in order to get the features that I want in my cameras, plus that, I'd have to spend about $15,000 on C200s. So that's not gonna happen anytime soon. Another feature that makes the M6 a great camera for someone who's creating YouTube videos is the fact that it has a 3.5mm external mic input. And that's an awesome feature because it lets you use an external microphone instead of the onboard one on the camera. So even with this super small camera, you can still attach a nice external shotgun mic or a lavalier mic and get much better audio than the on-camera microphone is gonna get you. This is an awesome compact setup. It's light, you'll get great pictures and great audio, so it's just perfect for vlogging. Just wanted to give you an idea of what this is gonna look like, and even, as I move around, and even if I move myself within the frame, you'll see that I always stay in focus. It's tracking my face, and should look pretty good. I wanted you to see and also hear what it sounds like with an external microphone. Now, as far as using a lavalier microphone, you can even go wireless if you want. I can connect my Sennheiser AVX with an XLR to 3.5mm adapter right to the camera, and now I'm getting a lav mic that's wireless. So now I don't have to worry about being tethered to the camera or even being super close to the camera. I can just put it down on the tripod and step back, and the microphone is still on me. And that's great for me when I want to get different types of shots without switching and using like a shotgun microphone for this shot and then switching for a lavalier for that one. The lav stays on me, it's wireless, I'm not connected to the camera, and I can just get any type of shot that I want. Again, that's not gonna work for everyone because this AVX is pretty expensive, but I just wanted to show you how much you can actually get out of this fairly inexpensive camera. Okay, so now let's look at the size, weight, and build of the Canon M6. It's pretty small and light, and again, that's what I think is one of the reasons that makes it a great choice for vlogging and for just creating YouTube content in general. It's so portable, light, you can take it with you anywhere. So even with a small tripod and an external microphone, it's still a really small and light setup. The build quality is really nice. It's super solid. And as I mentioned before, I really like this rubber material that they have all the way around. It just keeps the camera secure in my hand and just feels super solid. I already talked about the selfie screen, the flip screen. and why I think this makes it a better camera than the M5. And again, why it's such an important feature for anyone that's going to be creating their own content. If you're the only one there, if you're just holding the camera, pointing it at yourself, or even if you have it on a tripod, it's awesome to be able to see yourself and know that you're framed correctly rather than shooting the entire video and then going back to look at it and seeing that you weren't framed correctly or that you're out of focus or anything like that. Another thing that I like is that since this is a touchscreen, you can navigate through all the menus and change all the settings right from the screen itself. So sometimes the camera is pointed at me, and if I want to make sure that I'm in focus, I can just click on my face. Or if I want to change to a different white balance or anything like that, I can do that without having to start messing around with the buttons on the camera. And then at the same time, if I'm behind the camera and I'd rather use these buttons, I have that option too. But it's really nice to have options. Another cool feature about this camera is that it has built-in Wi-Fi with NFC, or near field communication. And that lets you pair the M6 with a tablet or a smartphone and then transfer images and video between the camera and your mobile device. And this is an awesome feature if you're just out and about. Let's say you either did a shoot or you just took some pictures and you want to share them on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, wherever. You can just connect this wirelessly to your mobile device and then transfer the images and then go ahead and post them. It's super, super easy. Now, if you want to take this even a step further, you can actually use the Camera Connect app to control the camera. So now you can have this camera up on a tripod facing you, and then you can use your phone to start recording, set focus, really control almost every feature in the camera. And at the same time, you can use it as an external monitor to, like, let's say the camera is farther away from you, so you can't actually use this screen because it's too far. You can have your phone right here and then use it as an external monitor. So that's like a super nice feature. One of the things that I always like to talk about when I review cameras is the skill level of the user. Because a lot of times people come to me and they're like, well, what's the best camera? Well, what's the best camera out there? Well, what I might think is the best camera might not be what I recommend as the best camera for you, because we may have different skill levels and we may have different requirements for the camera too. So when people say stuff like best, my first question is like, well, what are you gonna use it for? Let's start there and then work backwards into which camera style and type will work for you, and then we can pick a few specific cameras that fit there, and we can go looking at your budget and things like that. What I really love about the M6 is that it's got a nice balance. It has tons of features and manual control for someone who's more advanced or someone who's looking to learn more. And at the same time, it has tons of presets and automation for someone who's either a beginner or just someone who doesn't want to mess with it right now. You can just pick it up and start shooting right away. Now, I also want to talk about a few other features about this camera that may help you make a buying decision. The first thing I want to mention is that the M6 can do in-body time-lapse. Now, time-lapse is something that a lot of people like, but they're usually intimidated by it. And, especially if you're having to take individual photos and then create a movie out of them later in post-production. Now, the M6 has a time-lapse movie mode, which lets you select between 3 presets and then another one that you can just customize. What's nice is that it comes with the 3 presets. So if you're a beginner, you can just go ahead and try them and see the types of results you get with each one. At the same time, you can save your own presets. So if, for example, there's one, if you want to set one up for clouds and another one for sunrise or sunset, and then another one for people walking around. What's great is you can save all 3 presets, and then the next time you want to shoot a sunset, you just select it and go. You don't have to do it every single time. So basically for each one of them, you're going to select how long the camera should wait between taking each picture, whether it should auto expose each image or just use the initial auto exposure for all the images, and that's the one you're going to want to use most of the time. And then finally, whether you want to be able to preview each picture as it's being taken. Most of the time I don't, I just leave it and then I walk away. And then once you make those selections, the camera will tell you how long it's going to take for it to shoot and then how long the resulting movie is going to be. And I'll probably end up doing a tutorial about this and posting it later. So for right now, just trust me, it's super, super easy to do. Now, another feature that I want to talk about, especially if you're using this for vlogging, you're moving around, you're going to hand hold this camera, is image stabilization. Now, the M6 uses a 5-axis digital in-body stabilization along with the stabilization on the lens itself. And it combines both of them to try to reduce some of the handshake that comes in video that's being shot while you're hand holding the camera. Now, sometimes I do more stabilization in post-production, but the simplest thing would be to let the lens and the camera do that for you. Now, another feature that I really like is this asterisk button over here that's both on the camera, and there's also one right here on the touch screen. What's nice about it is that it lets you use auto exposure and then lock it. So that if the lighting conditions change, like let's say you're outside, you're under a tree, and the sun keeps moving in and out of the clouds. So you're gonna start getting brighter and lighter, and if the camera keeps switching, it's gonna be super distracting in your video. Because you really don't want the camera to make slight alterations to the exposure every single time the lighting conditions change just a little bit. So instead, you can get your exposure one time, lock it in place, and then it's gonna stay like that until you hit that button again. Another thing is sometimes the camera will auto expose for a particular situation, and you may not like exactly how that looks. So there's an exposure compensation knob right here, and then you can just use it to either go to the plus side and make the picture brighter, or go to the minus side and make the picture a little bit darker until you get exactly what you want. And again, because it's locked, it's not gonna go anywhere once you set it. And then once you're done with that particular shot, you just set it back to 0 and you're good to go. Okay, so I think the M6 is an awesome camera for someone who's trying to create content for YouTube, to do any vlogging, or if you just want a really nice mirrorless camera that's portable and you can take with you anywhere. The APS-C sensor and the Digic 7 processor work really nicely together to give you a super nice image quality, and you can shoot full HD or 1080p at up to 60 frames per second. The ability to have interchangeable lens is super nice. Again, you can start with just this very simple kit with the 15-45, and then as I mentioned before, as your needs change, you can just buy one extra lens at a time, and you're now creating a system all based on this one camera body. The dual pixel autofocus is sweet. It's just perfect for creators. It's fast, it's reliable, it tracks you wherever you are in the frame. I think it's just unbelievable for anyone who wants to create stuff for YouTube. I love the fact that it has an external mic input, so I can attach a really nice external microphone and then get much better audio without having to record it separately and then sync everything later on in post. I super love the flip up selfie screen. I think it's really important for anyone who's shooting their own video. I'm actually gonna take that one step further. For me, that would be a deal breaker. If I couldn't have a screen pointed at me, it just wouldn't be a camera that I would buy for creating videos on YouTube. With this screen, I can always see that I'm framed exactly how I want to be framed and that my image is in focus, and it's just something that I don't have to worry about because I can always check throughout the video. The Wi-Fi and Bluetooth options are great. Use the Camera Connect app and I can super quickly and wirelessly, of course, move images between the camera and a mobile device so then I can easily share them. There are a ton of features and manual settings that I appreciate when I want to have a little more control over my video or images, and then at the same time, lots of presets that are going to be perfect for any user at any skill level. Finally, we talked about the time-lapse movie mode, image stabilization, and the exposure lock button. And those are features that I think you're really going to enjoy. The body alone sells right now for $679, and the kit with the 15-45mm lens is $799, which is a great deal because the lens on its own is $299. So you're basically saving $179 on the lens. I'll put a link in the description to this camera and the kit because there are always specials and discounts, and the link will automatically be updated with the most current pricing. I really hope that this video gave you a good overview of the Canon EOS M6. If it did, please give this video a like, tweet it, share it, and then hit the subscribe and notification buttons. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Tech Gear Talk. Good luck and see you soon.